Welcome to the Midnight Writers Podcast, helping authors become better writers.
Episode 14, The Writing Blues. This is John.
This is Lena.
And this is Ben.
Don't you ever have those days where you're sitting there writing something and it just isn't working?
Or you can't get yourself to write because you just can't do this anymore and I suck and I shouldn't be doing this.
Yes.
Or you're looking at a huge manuscript that you've written and you need to edit it and nobody else is wanting to read it at all and not getting back to you. Yeah, those are some tough days.
So as you can tell, we all have those instances where just the whole writing thing doesn't seem like it's working right now.
Yeah.
So, what do you do and how do you get over that?
Well, instinct is to take a step back and maybe go do something else for a while, but sometimes when you've got a deadline, that's not really an option. So, we've been working on the short stories for our anthology that's going to be coming out this year, and I got to a point where I was about halfway to 3/4 of the way through, and I was struggling, and I felt like the story was pretty good. I felt like, it was worth continuing. It wasn't bad enough that I needed to completely start over, but it's definitely trying to figure out how to end it, and it's just, why am I doing this? There was a moment where I was like, why did I join this group? And I'm like an integral member of this group too, so I can't just be like, never mind, not doing it. I'm like, I gotta finish this. So I kind of did take a little step back, and I actually went back and read some of my older stuff back before I had expectations and things nobody else had read that I was actually kind of proud of, reading it going, okay, my writing's actually pretty good. I can do this. I just have to plug through, and just remembering that your first draft is going to suck. It is. I mean, but being able to fix something you've already made is a lot easier than trying to fix it as you're writing it. I mean,
yeah,
that's something I've had to learn. But I did end up finishing the story, and now I'm in editing phase, which is a lot easier, and it feels so good to be done.
I never thought I'd say that, but I'm looking forward to getting to that step.
I know, I thought you were going to beat me, because you had your story almost done, and I'm like, I'm not even close.
Yeah, I had my story almost done, and then I started over because it was boring and not working, and it was really difficult it was just having a really hard time to write, and I couldn't figure out why. And then as I went back and read through it, I'm like, this is just boring. There's nothing happening, and it's all dialogue. It's going to be incredibly difficult to fix, so I threw that out and started over. And the first draft was a little bit better. But again, it just got to the same point where I think I was just writing the wrong genre for the story. So then I started a first draft. And it's delayed me a lot. I mean, the deadline's next week, and I'm almost done with the first draft. But I think I finally got it now. I just had to realize that I think the story I was writing in wasn't working in the sci-fi genre. And maybe, I don't know, I don't have a lot of experience with the sci-fi genre because most of what I've written is fantasy.
Right.
So I'm like, maybe I'm going to have an easier time doing this in fantasy. So I switched, and it's been more fun. Still have to work on it, but it's more fun.
Yeah, I definitely have the other side of that problem right now, because I feel really good when I'm writing, because I'm writing so fast. It's essentially like I'm reading the story as it's coming out of my head.
Boy, I wish I had that problem.
Yeah, well, the problem being is that because of that, I do get a little bit of diarrhea of the words. And I have now, I've got a trilogy, and it is actually, a size that would be comparable to, works that are published out there. It's not as short and concise as my first trilogy. But now I'm looking at it, and I'm like, okay, now I have to edit this thing. And I'm just staring up at this mountain of, 310,000 words, and I'm like, how in the world am I going to get this into shape? And I mean, it's already pretty good. It's just now I got to get the continuity right. I got to get, some of the little plot holes and things that I didn't notice as I was writing it so fast, get those fixed, and, rein in some of the fluff and those other things. And it's like, I'm just dreading it, because it's like, I look at it and it was a good story when I was writing it, and I kind of enjoy it. I mean, that's the problem, is that I keep telling myself, okay, I'm doing this for me, and if nobody else reads it, that's okay. but then once I find out that nobody does actually want to read it,
That's definitely a blow.
yeah, because it's like, hey, I'm giving this to people for free to read, and they still won't get back to me on, hey, this is what I thought about it, because people just don't read anymore. I mean, it's hard to find people who are interested in reading because there's so much other things you could do. So,
and it's also harder to do a beta read than it is to do a normal read, because a normal read, you're sitting there to read to relax.
Right.
When you're beta reading, you're intentionally looking for problems with the story.
Right.
And so you have to be there ready to write things down and take notes.
Really be paying attention.
Yeah. Well, and the other problem with beta reading is also if you just can't even finish the story, it's like, well, where did you not finish? It's like, then at that point you feel guilty because, oh, well, I never actually finished this story and I don't want to get back to the guy because like, well, I never finished this and, whatever. But it's like, well, that's still useful material. But again, I think it's more a factor of people are busy. I don't want to be a nag to them saying, every 2 days, hey, how's it going? How's it going? And like, then they have a whole inbox of emails from me that they've never read because they know I'm just going to bug them about it. So.
Yeah. I think it's hard finding beta readers anyway because, I don't know, you get the extra expectation on top of you.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I mean, it would be like I'm willing to beta read for people because I figure it gives me some writer karma. Because then it's like, oh, hey, I did this for you. Now, if you do this for me, we'll be elsewhere. But even then, it's like, well, other writers obviously have their own challenges and their own things that they're writing. And it's like, I'm just in the stage where it's like, oh, yeah, I can edit, but I can edit other people's stuff. I don't want to edit my own stuff right now. So, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, when you're looking for a beta reader, the only people that are going to potentially respond are people that are already in your social network group.
Right.
The people you're asking.
Right.
But when you're actually selling a book, then it's out there on shelves, it's out there, or at least in digital shelves on Amazon.
Right.
It's grouped with other works from people who are looking. So you have a wider base of people. Even if you're not a well-known author, you already have a wider base of people that potentially are going to buy that book than you have that's going to read it. So don't think that because nobody's going to beta read it that you're not going to get anybody to actually buy your book, because that's not the case.
So the one way that I've started to kind of get over it and get back into, okay, hey, this isn't so bad, this is a good story, you can do this, is actually when I started planning out covers for them. So I'm like, okay, there are many assets and aspects of doing self-published work, and so it's like editing is not the only part of it. It's like you can do the visual part, so it's like just pulling away and, like Lena said, just trying something else, doing something else, but still towards the project. I think that's starting to help get my momentum back up and my confidence back up, like, okay, yeah, this will be good. So
what do you think, Lena, when your confidence is shot, what's the best thing to do?
Well, I've had different things that I've had to do. Like I said, like I go back and read my old stuff all the time. Like I know I say that a lot, but I do. And I've been writing for a long time, and I have like fan fiction and just general stuff. And it's just, I've been doing this for a long time. I really like doing this. Sometimes I just need to find my happy writer place and just find that feeling again, and then go back to what I was working on and being like, how do I bring that feeling back? In my Raptor story that I was working on, I think I was getting at a point where it was like getting boring. I'm like, I need action faster. I need things to be exciting faster, because if it's exciting to write, it's exciting to read, and it just moves things faster. So that's definitely a part. Like if you're having problems writing it, like consider if, maybe your pacing's off. If you're spending too much time on a boring scene, it's time to end it and just move on to the exciting stuff.
it could be that the story was started in the wrong spot too.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, just jump to the exciting stuff and then maybe fill in.
Yeah, and like I've had problems with other stories like what you had, John, where it's like you start writing and it's like, it's not working. Like I can't get this to work. I'm boring. Nothing is working. I don't care about anything. And then I'll change it, or I'll change the point of view. I'll change the main character. There's a whole bunch of pieces that go into making a story. And sometimes you just have to start tweaking each one and figure out which one or which combinations of pieces will help start putting your story together. Because there was that short story for the Mile High anthology that I just could not get to work. I started that like 5 times, and I was just starting to kind of get it together, but I just couldn't do it. I was writing in a genre I wasn't really comfortable with because I was trying to force it. Do not force it. Not when there's a deadline on the line. If you're just doing it for fun, just for practice, that'll help. But yeah, I was just forcing it, and I was like, I can't do this, and I ran out of time. But the story now is more science fiction, which is what I'm more comfortable with. And so that was a lot easier for me. So sometimes it's playing up to your own strengths, know where your strengths are, know when to address your weaknesses, but definitely play to your strengths.
I think that as authors, we're in a weird place right now where we're trying to learn. We're trying to move from, yes, this is a fun hobby, I like to just write, to actually move into, I would like at least to do this, if not professionally, do it well and publish a book.
Right.
And so we're trying to, I don't know about you guys, but I'm listening to, the Writing Excuses podcast, our own podcast. I'm taking in all this information and trying to figure out how do I improve my writing. And I'm reading all the books from Kevin J. Anderson and
Stephen King.
Not Farrar. What's the other guy? Who did the $1 Million Ideas and $1 Million Outlines?
Those are kind of expensive. I mean, I work for the government, but I don't know that kind of money.
It was a huge investment to buy the book, but I got it. Yeah. But I'm learning all this stuff and trying to put it into my outlines. And like my first short story for the Rapture anthology, I had a nice outline. I took the way that I built my outline for the Sidekicks anthology with Mile High Con. It worked well, so I'm like, let's do the same thing. And I'm trying to do, add in the scene sequel, the 7 parts of story structure,
right.
and all this stuff I'm throwing in to kind of formalize it and be like, I got a good outline here. And then when I go to actually write it, it just isn't working. And I actually found out part of my problem when I was going back to rewrite my story is, even though I didn't recognize this, my when we were at Anomaly Con, we were at a class with Stan Latore about how to make characters your reader's going to love. And basically it's making the story about the character. Make the character something powerful and change and all this stuff that happens.
Right.
Well, when I made my outline for my Eternity's Arc, which is the Sidekicks anthology story, the entire outline was related around the character. The character was evolving. And I didn't even notice that when I went to do the one for the Raptor story. It was about events that happen and not about the character. So that was part of, even though I had my plan for how to approach the outline, I was focusing on the wrong thing, and it just, that's why.
Yeah, I think you really sometimes can get too involved with the process and the different, trying to hit all of the points that you need to do and, doing all this research on how to write a story, but don't forget you're a writer. Your imagination can speak for itself. Like really just, sometimes stories come out just instinctually, and I think sometimes you need to really, remember that. Because, if you try to, analyze it too much, it's not going to come out as good.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
That's basically what I was trying to say.
Yeah. Good! I've got it!
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to get from an idea to something that's a realized idea. Because, I mean, I've got a bunch of really kind of heady concepts that I'm like, how do I get this out onto the page? And a lot of times I feel like I'm really laying it out there and trying to figure out, okay, how do I make a reader understand something like the lack of antimatter balance in the universe and those kind of things. It's like, how do I get that in there? And a lot of times it's like, yeah, it's a great idea, but there's just really no way to conceivably get it onto the page. And then, you get frustrated, and it's like, well, either, abandon it or, try a different tactic or different, just try again from the beginning. But yeah, it's tough when there's something you really have a good feeling about and just it's not coming out on the paper.
Yeah, I feel like if you have a really good idea that you can't stop thinking about, you got to find a way to do it.
Yeah.
Don't abandon it. Just got to find the right way to do it.
Right. And that's the thing. It's like your idea could then be really well explained, but then everything around it that supports it is weak. Because it's like, oh, I'm just going for this one idea, and then, well, that's great, but what about everything else that's around it? What about the characters and the setting and everything else? It's like, well... And that's kind of the problem I'm having right now. Because I'm like, what if all the constellations came down and beat snot out of each other in a tournament? It's like, hey, that's a pretty cool idea. But then that's kind of a boring idea because it's just a lot of fighting, and I need something deeper and more than that. And so it's like, well, trying to figure out, okay, there's interactions with characters and, the whole world that I'm trying to create. And it's like, it's a lot of work. It's not necessarily the best, but it's getting there. I mean, it's another step. It's another piece in the repertoire.
we learn as we go.
Yeah.
So we've all taken different approaches to the point. You said you start your stories over sometimes, and then you sit there and you tweak different parts of a story. I just completely started a new story, and the first time tried to go from a completely different angle, and the second time went in a whole different genre. Mm-hmm. And have you ever restarted stories?
So yes. So in the Constellation tournament, I wrote part 1 in 10 days. So that was essentially 5,000 words a day for 10 days straight. And so I wrote it really fast, and it was really
Understatement.
It had a lot of so the skeleton was there, the muscles and sinew and all the skin and other things were not. So unfortunately, that meant that I did have to start fresh. But what I did starting fresh is I had the original manuscript in one Word document, and then I had an empty Word document on the other side, and I retyped the entire thing into the new Word document because there was a lot of things I had to move around too and add different perspectives and things inside it. So yeah, I essentially started from scratch, but I started from scratch with something that I had already created and essentially rewrote it. Yeah, rewrote it and expanded it as I was rewriting it.
So my question then is, how do you know when to do what? When do you just throw it out, or when do you just try the same story with a different tweak? When do you try rewriting it? While you sit there and stare at the story? I mean, how do you know what to do when?
I think for me, it depends on how attached I am to the story.
Yeah.
Because that first one that I tried like 3 times, ended up giving up on, I just couldn't get excited about it at all. And I think that was part of it. My Velociraptor story, I felt that it had a lot of, mass to it. I'm like, I can work with this. I can make this work. Mm-hmm. But you've got to make it so you care about it. And if I don't care about it, I can't write it.
Right.
And
it's just...
readers probably won't care about it either.
Well, I mean, if I don't care about it, there's no way a reader's going to like
writing,
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was like, I think that might be kind of my approach.
Yeah, so if you ask my wife, my problem is I like to complete things. So it's likely I won't ever throw out what I've written and then just say, okay, I'm never going to use any of this and just start fresh. I'm going to make it work. I'm going to, polish a turd sometimes when it comes down to it, because it's like, for me, it's an investment. It's like Lena said, it's a matter of I've put so much time into this already. I want to see this through to the end. And, if it's a piece of crap that's now sitting on my shelf as a self-published novel, great. That's
or maybe you can save it, and maybe you'll later come up with some awesome idea that really pulls it together.
Yeah.
Like they always say, do not throw anything away that you've written.
No, I definitely have, each version as a new Word document, even if it's just a, copy, create new version, and then just do line edits. But
I usually have a document where it's even when I'm editing and I take out a line,
mm-hmm.
I really like that line. I have this document and it's just the name of my project in pieces.
Right.
And I just have this collection of stuff I've pulled out because I'm I can't completely get rid of it. And maybe it'll work in another story.
Yeah. And part of my issue too is it's well, I have so many ideas in the coffer for novels that I'm I want to research and plan those. It's I don't want to actually work on refining the ones I've already written.
That's hard.
Because it's I learned a lot in my first trilogy, and unfortunately that taught me, hey, have all the parts written and then edit them together, which now I'm looking at, I'm that's stupid. Yeah, continuity will be great, across all 3. I'll have the character's eye color be the same or whatever, and timeline of events. But when it comes down to it, it's daunting, and I'm potentially going to do that for my 5-book series for the King Arthur sci-fi reimagining, and it's do I really want to wait until all 5 books are done before I start?
It's going to be horrifying.
I mean, I've given myself time for it, but it's
you should definitely do 1 book at a time.
I think so. Well, part of it is again, going back to the beta readers, it would be helpful to, because with the Constellation tournament, I didn't know how it was going to end. I knew how it was going to start, but I had to write each book as I went along, and then I had to kind of backfill to get continuity right because of, I had this idea in book 2 that I needed to work back into book 1. So yeah, I mean, that's where the beta readers really come in handy, because then it's okay, here's what works, here's book 1, tell me what you think, and then I make tweaks with that, and then move on forward to book 2, make tweaks with that then, it's a recursion. It goes back and has to go. And
Well, I think there's definitely an advantage to waiting to publish the books until the whole series is
yeah,
done,
certainly.
because you get to do that.
Right.
But at the same time, forcing yourself to stick with what you've already written.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like, so I'm trying to get part 1 edited for now the 3rd time. So it's like I've already done 2 edits on it. So it's the this again. Okay, it's like I already know this story. I already know kind of what happens. So it's like I almost can't spend enough time away from it to distance myself from it, because I've spent so much time in it, just editing and writing, that it's like it's hard to then say, okay, I need to look at this fresh. And it's like I almost need to read it backwards, to be honest, just to get all the things in place. But I don't know. I mean, it's honestly work. I mean, people are all like, oh yeah, the creative arts, like writing or photography or painting or whatever. It's like, oh, you just spend all day just kind of being free and just, pouring your soul out onto the page. It's like, yeah, well, that's like maybe 1/10 of it. The other 9/10 is a lot of hard work. And sometimes if you're like me and have a full, 40-hour-a-week job with a wife that needs your attention after work and on the weekends, it's like, well, finding time to put in that extra, 40 hours for writing is difficult. And then it's like when you feel you're falling behind, it just kind of goes down the spiral of, what's the point if you're not getting feedback and that people, so like I have a blog too that I can see, I get a few views every week, usually from like Russia for some reason. But it's like if none of the people that are in my social network are reading the stuff that I write, then it's like, well, yeah, do it for yourself. But then past that, what's the point? So.
Okay, after restarting the camera, I forgot what I wanted to ask. Oh, did I tell you what my new subject is for my raptor story?
Oh, what is it? Because I know you're doing the Firefly type one. Are you still sticking with that, or are you doing something?
The new title is Velociraptors of the Round Table.
Ah, gosh. I might have to steal that.
All right, so any last comments to other people who might be having writing blues right now and really struggling with writing?
Everybody has them. You may have to play around and figure out what works for you, but there's got to be something that makes you, there's a reason you did this in the first place. Find it again.
Well, I was reading a Facebook post from Quincy
Allen,
and he's got books published. And he was even talking about this week about how he was just reading his current work or whatever and just feeling like he just sucks at this. And why do it? It's not worth it. He sucks as a writer until somebody actually came and said, hey, I really like this book or whatever, and it just completely turned around.
Oh, maybe another suggestion is have your mother read it.
Yeah, see, my mother will read it years after I've published it, but yeah, that's also part of my problem.
Yeah, I gave a rough draft of my raptor story to my mother, and she was like, I cried, it was so sad, which is, what I was intending. Yeah. And then she's like, you're so good, right? You're such a good writer. Yeah. I'm like, thank you, Mommy. Well, I feel better now. Yeah.
Length certainly helps. I know with my Velociraptor story, people are, got back to me. And I'm like, okay, great. And they were saying, yeah, it's great and all that. But it's the longer stuff. I think my advice is definitely, I guess, power through. I mean, it's like work. And sometimes you don't like doing work, but you get a momentum once you kind of get back into it and start, going and just power through. Sometimes, you might have to get through that weak spot and then you'll get to the good stuff and then that'll re-energize you. But yeah, you maybe even just jump to the good stuff.
Well, I was mentioning that Quincy thing to say that, even people who've been out there and writing for a while and who've published and who've been there think that. I think I was reading something from Hugh Howey where he was even saying that his new stuff he's writing, he's like, oh, this is no good until he gives it to other people and stuff. So the doubt is going to be there throughout your writing career, I think. And we just got to realize that we're writing. We're having fun. We're creating stories. And just, even if it's not working, find a way to make it work. If you have to put the story on a shelf and move to a different project, then maybe that's what you have to do. So don't be afraid. Just enjoy writing.
Yep, that's the whole point.
Yeah, if you're not having fun, you might be doing something wrong.
It's like, there's going to be days we're going to be working hard, but there's got to be fun in there somewhere.
Yep.
Okay. Well, we will see you guys next week.
Bye.
Thanks much.
Thank you for listening to the Midnight Riders podcast. If you've enjoyed this content, sign up for our newsletter on our website, midnightwriterssociety.com, where you'll get a lot more great information. See you next Wednesday.